Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, BioCrossroads marks a major milestone, as does venture capital investment in Indiana. We visit an endangered landmark in Mishawaka. A timely grant will help boost historically black neighborhoods. An Indiana-based autism therapy service is growing. A robotics competition returns to Indy. We break down the business of basketball ahead of March Madness. And we talk remote work with our partners at the IBJ. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. BioCrossroads is marking 20 years of growth in Indiana's $80 billion life sciences sector. CEO Patty Martin says investment and jobs are touching every corner of the state. She joined Inside Indiana business host Gary Dick with more.
I tell you, it seems like yesterday. I remember when BioCrossroads was launched, but 20 years, and it has been a growth story to be sure. The industry, as an example, growing from $32 billion to $80 billion in the state. So anyone who thinks the life sciences aren't a very, very key part of the economy, you look at the numbers and they tell a different story.
They absolutely tell a different story. And a little known fact, Gary, is that we actually export the most product out of the state of Indiana, with the exception of California. So we are a big player in life sciences.
Wow, that is an amazing statistic. And, I think many people hear of Lilly and Roche, and you going down the list, the assets we have here, Purdue and IU. But sometimes what's lost are the startup companies. And BioCrossroads has worked with 500 startup companies over these 20 years, getting them off the ground and growing, adding jobs and investment.
That's exactly right, Gary. I think many people think about life sciences as large pharma, large biotech, white lab coats, and really it's much, much more. It reaches across the entire state and has everything from laboratories to manufacturing floors, where advanced manufacturing is a significant capability for life sciences in the state.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on that because I think that's interesting to note. As you say, life sciences, you think of labs and research, but advanced manufacturing, which is the sweet spot for Indiana to be sure, that's a big part of the life sciences too.
It's absolutely a huge contributor to our economy and jobs in the state. And I'll just highlight one particular fact that folks probably aren't aware of. That is that Indiana is the only state that's manufacturing all 3 COVID vaccinations, and we are manufacturing them by the tens of millions. So hats off to our manufacturing organizations here in the state that are helping fight the pandemic.
Wow. Great statistic. Jobs and wages. And in the life sciences, so many of these jobs pay well above the average wage. So these are the kinds of jobs that states all over the country are trying to keep and get.
That's correct, Gary. And our life sciences industry pays about 2 times the normal average wage from across the state. And again, that's in all kinds of jobs. And one of the things that we want to promote is we've been very successful in recruiting companies to the state of Indiana. We need to make sure that our talent pipeline is ready to fill those jobs, and it's a great place to be. Yeah,
and as part of that, and that's a great point there as well, some of the initiatives that BioCrossroads has really spearheaded, 16 Tech, the innovation district on the near west side of Indianapolis, which now, after years of talk, is becoming a reality. The Indiana Business Research Institute. There are several really major initiatives that now are growing and flourishing, in large part because of BioCrossroads.
We have been really blessed at BioCrossroads. Our foundation is really rooted in doing primary research to identify the opportunities for the state. One big one was the first electronic medical records consortium, Indiana Health Information Exchange, which put us on the map with respect to data. So we are very fortunate. Please come down and visit us at 16 Tech. It's really evolving. It's going to be a great place.
Hey, for those who haven't been there or aren't aware, give us a thumbnail, Patty, of 16 Tech and what the vibe is like over there now, because I've been out there and it really is literally coming to life, which I know for a lot of people has been talked about for many, many years. For a lot of people, it's exciting to see it come to life.
Gary, it was roughly 60 acres that had not been developed, and it is absolutely coming to life. I've hosted folks from all over the country at 16 Tech. If you haven't been down, come down to the AMP. We've got great restaurateurs down there, and when you walk in, you're going to feel like you're in downtown San Francisco or Boston. And it's really a great place to convene. We are hosting a or we're running a grant from Lilly Endowment that's focused on convening our research universities and our industry. They have shared space now at at the AMP. So you really understand it until you come down to visit.
Hey, we only have 20 seconds, Patty, but I know looking forward, you've established 3 venture funds, which is very exciting. As you look going forward, can we expect more of that type of activity from BioCrossroads?
Yeah, Gary, we have established 3 seed funds. Our third is nearly fully invested in 32 companies who've gone on to raise almost $800 million in capital. So yes, we are evaluating what our next opportunities are, and there's a lot more growth and a lot more investment to be made here in the
And
state.
we will be excited to cover it as well. Patty Martin is the CEO at BioCrossroads. 20 years of growth, and doesn't seem like there's any slowing down at all. Patty, thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
It's a milestone for investment in Indiana. Venture capital investment topped $1 billion in 2021, exceeding the total dollars invested in 2019 and 2020 combined. Elevate Venture CEO Chris Lamoth came on the show to discuss the success story.
Big number, and this whole venture equation, if you will, has been a tough one over the years for Indiana to solve. But the Elevate venture report came out $1.4 billion, significantly higher than the last couple of years. What's really driving it, Chris?
I think there were some national trends there, Gary, that were positive. For instance, venture deals across the country are almost double what it was the previous year, which is quite remarkable. I think that there's more and more people putting money into through angel investment, through VC, private equity, versus the markets nationally, and I think that we followed that trend here in Indiana as well.
So, a number of companies, as you look, Formstack, Greenlight Guru, Inari, so in technology, but also the life sciences. So industry diversity, I think, would be a positive that we look at as you look inside the numbers as well.
Yes, I think the majority of our deals are business to business, very tech oriented and related. But I think one of the great opportunities, and we're seeing it begin to build in Indiana, is in the life sciences, as you're beginning to see engineering and life sciences coming together and creating new therapies, new methodologies. I think that Indiana is incredibly well positioned to take advantage of that in the decade ahead.
Hey, talk about the statewide nature of the investment as well. I know much of the investment certainly at some point has been centered in central Indiana, but you're seeing, and you've had real intentional efforts to get it out around the state.
Yes. Oh, it's interesting, Gary. Over the years, you and I have talked quite a bit about that when I've been on your show about, 7 years ago or so when I first joined Elevate Ventures, the heavy majority of our investments were largely in central Indiana. But with the partnerships that we formed around the state, we're beginning to see more and more deals outside. We've seen a steady increase in those deals, and I'm very excited. When you start to look at some of the regions like, Elkhart, South Bend, and the Fort Wayne surrounding counties, and even Columbus and Bloomington and places like that are really beginning to see some momentum and movement. Yeah. And I'm excited about that because I think that's going to continue to build.
Yeah, Chris, nearly 7 years on the job. You are leaving your position at the end of the month, stepping away after leading the organization for a number of years. As you think back on the last nearly 7 years, what's your big takeaway from your service at Elevate Ventures?
That's an interesting question, Gary. I think that, I see so many hardworking entrepreneurs and so many people that want to be entrepreneurs. And I feel like there are 5 great equalizers in our country. One is kind of hard work and perseverance. Pretty much if you work hard and you persevere, you're going to find success in anything that you do. Another one is education, critical. Education. Skills are just absolutely critical. So I encourage everybody to continue to push forward on those. The other great equalizer, frankly, is entrepreneurism. I mean, the reality is that anybody can move into entrepreneurism. Anybody can take a risk. Anybody can seek to solve other people's problems consistently that creates a company. And then the last one I would say is faith, frankly. I think those are the great equalizers, and I encourage all Hoosiers to really think about that and apply themselves. And I think they'll be shocked at the success they will have.
Those are great takeaways indeed that can be used by anyone in any line of business, that to be sure. Chris Lamote, as always, great to have you on the show. Good luck in what's next. I know you got a lot on your plate, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Gary. Look forward to seeing you.
The Cam and Schellinger Brewery in Mishawaka is the last remaining reminder of a once thriving industrial area along the city's riverfront. Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond takes us there to tell us about a movement to save the historic landmark instead of tearing it down.
One beautiful beer.
The oldest known recipe in the world is beer.
A dry beer, a mellow beer, a hearty beer.
In fact, some historians even credit the cold one with the rise of civilization itself.
For thirst-quenching refreshment.
So one could argue America's earliest breweries should be considered hallowed ground, especially if they're still standing. It may not be a Coors or a Budweiser, but in its day, Cam and Schellinger was quite the operation.
And then Cam and Schellinger, they may not have been one of the largest industries of Mishawaka, but they had lots of products and their name was everywhere.
But it was brothers-in-law Adolf Cam and Nicholas Schellinger, both German immigrants, that would make the Cam and Schellinger Brewing Company one of Mishawaka's most celebrated manufacturers.
Cam Schellinger Brewery started in 1853. The Cam family, there are two houses. This house and that house were family homes. Mrs. Cam at one time cooked for the workers. So it was a family affair.
One of my favorite parts is that in the Prohibition, they started making root beer and other types of things.
When Prohibition ended, Cam's was the state's first brewing operation to resume making beer. And production hit an all-time high. So much so, it sponsored the number 47 Cam Special in the 1938 Indianapolis 500.
It was a successful family-run business for almost 100 years.
But the prosperity wouldn't last. In 1951, the brewery permanently closed. It would see new life, though, in the late 60s, when developers adapted the site into a popular complex of shops and restaurants known as the 100 Center.
It was the place to be until the 1980s when the new malls were built up north of town and kind of the energy shifted, and this has kind of been a slow decline since then.
We're not able to get inside the building, so even as a city, because we have an out-of-town owner, so we don't know the situation with the state of the building inside. But structurally, it still looks pretty darn good.
It's solid masonry. You've got a building built out of brick and concrete.
You've got this piece that's kind of coming off, and behind it, you've got these metal bars kind of blocking
windows.
these.
A lot of different things going on back here, which I think is part of the fun of this site.
And to me, the best part is the fact that this is on the St. Joseph River.
It's an amazing location. We talked about the river was part of what really ran the factory.
It looks like a moat to me. It's kind of, this kind of surrounds the building, and this was the water that sourced the power.
It was the water that sourced the power that ran the Cam Brewery.
This back here is fabulous.
It just shows all of the different eras of this building from the 60s and 70s, and then later additions, and all the way through the 19-teens, 20s, and 30s, including the Ice House, which is the large building here on the right.
Random fun fact, the Ice House owned Indiana's first artificial ice machine in 1889.
They would use that building to help cool and ice down the beer until they started making root beer.
And that was for Prohibition.
That was Prohibition. Yeah, root beer had to do something. And so the tall building here, which I think also offers lots of opportunities for reuse. You can put a lot of different things inside this large, tall building.
Yeah.
And really bring it back to life again. Hopefully with more heat than it did when it was an ice house.
Now to the front of the building.
Certainly lots here that could be worked with to bring a lot of character back into a new use, but just real dynamic facades. It's time. It needs a new life.
It's one of the oldest structures left in the city of Mishawaka. From an historical standpoint, it's worth it.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
Rebuilding neighborhoods one home at a time. A $1 million grant from Columbus-based Cummins will help boost homeowner equity in historically black neighborhoods in Indianapolis. Cummins Vice President of Community Relations Mary Titsworth Chandler joined us with more.
This is an interesting initiative. I know companies all over the country are looking for ways to help build community. And this, I think, is a unique way. And it really does get at Black homeowner equity in allowing African Americans to build wealth. Talk about kind of the, how you came up with the idea for the program.
Yeah, so in looking at the many problems that have kept Black people from attaining the same level of wealth, really, that white people do, and home ownership and being denied home ownership is one of those ways, because as many of us know, our homes are the main way that we save. And so to solve that problem, we began talking to a lot of really expert community partners, including Renew, Indianapolis, Edna Martin Christian Center, the Martindale-Brightwood CDC, and said, how can we help you in the neighborhood solve this problem? And that's how we started the program.
Yeah, money always helps, but it's the way it's deployed. Talk about how this program will work. You mentioned Renew Indianapolis. That's where the $1 million grant will go, and then will be deployed to help build and buy 12 homes.
Yes, the city of Indianapolis and their funding is helping build the homes too. Our money is specifically going to help fill those gaps that a lot of people face when they try to buy a house. For example, putting together a down payment. So our money will help fill down payment assistance, for example, and then it will immediately or over time inure or become part of the homeowner's equity or savings in the house.
Mm-hmm. And interesting, too, that the people who are going to be building the homes, the construction workers and all the different ancillary support workers will be Black individuals as well.
That's right. So we're looking at every single piece of the value chain. And of course, we know that realtors, developers, builders, Renew is working hard with us to identify largely Black professionals to fulfill those roles. So it'll be a neighborhood enrichment, if you will, more than just the house itself.
Do you anticipate this can be an ongoing program? I know you're just getting started now, but as you look at the metrics and things like that this can be an annual program?
I think it'll take a while to build the houses, but we're certainly looking at this as a pilot to learn from and repeat, not only in Indianapolis, but in other cities where Cummins has a presence. And we also hope, Gary, that other funders, banks, foundations, will look at this program and say, hey, this is a really unique way to solve the problem. Let's do similar things in other neighborhoods or even in the Brightwood neighborhood itself also.
Major initiative, the Martindale-Brightwood neighborhood here in Indianapolis. Mary Titsworth Chandler coming to us from Cummins' beautiful office in downtown Indianapolis. Mary, thanks for joining us, and we'll be following up on the program going forward.
Many thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Indianapolis-based Hope Bridge, one of the largest autism therapy service providers in the nation, is hiring more than 4,000 employees and plans to open up 40 new locations. It's because demand is far outpacing supply. Hope Bridge founder and Chief Clinical Officer Kim Strunk joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
Let's talk about this explosive growth. What is causing so much growth for Hope Bridge?
Really, for the last 17 years, the prevalence and the need for the services has just been kind of mind-blowing. Recently, the CDC just updated their prevalence rates for autism to 1 in 44. But I think that, along the way, we've seen such progress in diagnostic processes and procedures that we're just really starting to be able to see these kids, the need really show. And excited to be able to provide the service that they need to get them help and help them to live their best life.
And also, I want you to mention your acquisition, because that really drummed up some numbers for you too, right?
Yep, absolutely. So Hope Bridge, for the first time, we acquired another autism company, which allowed us to expand our footprint to 12 states. So we are really a national presence, mostly Midwest, but we do have a couple of centers out west as well.
All right, we mentioned up top you're hiring 4,000 employees this year across your 12 states. Talk about what that growth is going to look like here in Indiana.
Yeah, so excited. You know, we have 19 centers in Indiana, and I think last time we spoke, we were just getting ready to open our Elkhart, Indiana center, and so excited to tell you that that is up and running and doing really well. But in Indiana, we are still looking and exploring at areas that may need a center. We are looking at about 450 jobs created in Indiana alone. Out of those 4,000, about 450 will be in Indiana, and that will be to fill the existing centers. We also just expanded our Carmel center, so they just doubled in size, moved to a new location and doubled in size there. So continuing to expand the centers that we have in Indiana, as well as continue to look for additional sites that might be good.
Okay, so we mentioned you're hiring 4,000 company-wide, about 450 here in Indiana. We hear a lot about the Great Resignation right now. Healthcare workers are facing burnout. There's a lot of challenging market forces right now. So how confident do you feel about the pipeline of specialists to be able to fill as many jobs as you're planning to fill?
Yeah, it's, I tell you, healthcare's a tough business to be in right now. And serving autism and the work that our team does is a hard job, to be honest with you. But the reality is that we really serve a noble mission. And so I'm really confident that we are going to be able to hit our numbers this year, because what we are doing makes such a difference. And I think people are really drawn to being able to be a part of making a difference in a child and family's lives. So while it is ambitious, the goal, for sure, it is, I do believe, going to be very achievable.
And Kim, I want you to talk just a little bit about the amazing journey that you've had. We mentioned this started with one center in Kokomo, now grown to over 100. I feel like that's got to amaze even you sometimes.
Yeah, it has really been probably the most rewarding journey of my life, to be able to be a part of this. So, 17 years ago, that was before the autism mandate. So it was really before there was any ability to get services paid for. It was also before there was a real awareness of the need to diagnose these children early, and the value in that. And even just the awareness of autism in general has been tremendously impacted, primarily by grassroots efforts of these families who have just really fought for services for their children. And so to be a part of that journey with those families has been extremely rewarding.
And I want to talk just briefly about the bottleneck that you've mentioned off camera. Your company really focuses on diagnostics, and that addresses a bottleneck that a lot of families come up against. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so, in order to get the insurance companies to reimburse for the ABA services, the children must have a diagnosis of autism. And that has historically been where families get tied up. So the wait list for a diagnostic appointment can be up to 2 years. And, for these kids, 2 years is a lifetime. You've missed so many developmental opportunities and windows when you have to wait for that diagnostic appointment before you can even start to think about treatment. So one of the things about 9 years ago, we introduced diagnostic services into our service line, and we've really had an impact on the ability to serve these children and increase their access to the services and the intervention. So it's something we are really committed to. We are actively seeking and recruiting psychologists to partner with us and help these children gain access to intervention quickly.
All right, Kim, good luck with all the growth. Thanks for being on the show today.
The largest robotics state championship in the U.S. returns to Lucas Oil Stadium. Events like this have helped Indiana become one of the top states for robotics programs in K-12 schools. TechPoint Foundation for Youth CEO George Giltner joined us in our Eye on Education segment.
So the state championship is next weekend, March 12. Amazing to me. We'll get into this, the numbers that we're seeing on the robotics programs here in Indiana. But the Tech Point Foundation for Youth is really spearheading this program. Give us a thumbnail description of this VEX Robotics competition. Next week's the state championship. But how many schools are involved and really what it's all about?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of starts back where we've been providing what we call robotic startup grants to elementary, middle, or high schools all over the state of Indiana. So to help start robotics teams and bring access to students in need so that they have equal access to STEM education. So students all the way back at the beginning of the school year in August have been building robots, competing at local competitions to earn their way at the state championship held, as you mentioned, March 12th at Lucas Oil Stadium. So this is kind of the big celebration, just like a state football championship, right? They go to the Lucas Oil Stadium to compete. The robotics students, elementary, middle, and high school, it's grown up to 274 teams from all over the state will actually come to the stadium and compete to make their way to the World Championship in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, we're going to talk about the impact and the impact on the STEM pipeline here in Indiana. But talk about the growth. I know COVID affected the competition, the programming, certainly. But talk about how many kids, young people, are involved in the VEX Robotics competition. Yeah, the little graphic kind of over your right shoulder highlights where Indiana started back in 2015. And this was under the direction of Mayor Ballard, and when he was the mayor of the city of Indianapolis, trying to help start robotics teams in schools in Indianapolis. And you can see there's a huge growth in central Indiana, but not a lot outside. And so he went to Tech Point Foundation for Youth about 7 years ago to said, let's take what we have, the momentum we have in Indianapolis, and let's go statewide with it. So for the last 7 years, we've been handing out grants, helping train teachers to make learning how to be a robotics coach accessible, easy, and fun. And it has taken off beyond what we expected. As you said, propelling us as the leader in STEM education in the country, of having more elementary and middle school robotics teams than any other state. 2 years ago, pre-COVID, we almost had 2,500 robotics teams. Wow. That rivaled California, Texas, Florida, all the larger states. And even during COVID, we were showing strong numbers. So the first year of our pandemic, we had about 700 teams. This year, we have about 1,500. So we're not back to where we started, but we're moving in the right direction. And with the state championship coming up, I think that's going to be kind of the capstone of the year and launch us into the next school year in 22-23. I have to ask you, too, a lot of attention being placed on getting more girls and women in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM fields. This program is certainly doing that, I know, in a big way. Our mission at Tech Point Foundation for Youth is make sure that there's equal access to STEM education, meaningful STEM education, and our priority populations are girls, students of color, and low-income students. And so we have major, I would say, initiatives and priorities to make sure that girls, students of color, have equal access. And we've seen a tremendous amount of growth, both for girls and students of color. We used to have dozens on that map in 2015, dozens of girls on robotics teams. And in 2022, we now have almost 15,000 girls on robotics teams. Wow. 43% of our students are girls, which is a tremendous. And about 25% of our students are students of color. So when companies, corporations are talking about a diverse talent pipeline, that is where we come in, is we're starting as young as first grade to try to give confidence and competence to girls, students of color. So by the time they make career decisions or go to college or careers, they are interested in these STEM fields, and they hopefully one day work for these companies. It's an amazing program, enjoying some amazing growth. The VEX Robotics State Championship next weekend, March 12th. George, I should mention, too, Group 1001 is the title sponsor of the competition. George Giltner is the president and CEO of the Tech Point Foundation for Youth. George, thanks again, and keep us posted on next week's competition. Thank you.
It's a basketball bonanza in Indiana with the IHSAA boys and girls tournaments, conference tournaments, and March Madness all on the way. Horizon League Commissioner Julie Rowe Losh joined Bill Benner to talk about it all on Inside Indiana Sports.
An unprecedented
March a year ago. But like we said in the tease, that doesn't mean hoops is going away as we're currently with the Big Ten Women's Tournament underway, and away we go with your championships followed by Big Ten and NCAA. What's it all mean for the city?
It's just incredible. This is a basketball city, as you know, and I think March is just a special time of year. You can feel the energy downtown. You see the street pole banners. People are excited. And yes, you're right. It's not all of March Madness, but it sure is a huge chunk of it. And we're excited to be a part of it.
Well, and the Horizon League, I know you're going to have your championships, your men's and women's championships Monday with semifinals Tuesday, noon for the women's championship, and then the championship for men that night. You made this decision to bring your title games to Indianapolis. And how's it been so far, even with the overview of COVID?
It's just incredible. This is year 3 for us, and we didn't have fans last year, and the excitement building with our local organizing committee, it's fantastic. And what we've really tried to do is 2 pieces: make it an incredible student athlete experience, which we are doing, and then make it a really significant community event. So we've added some amplifying events around Champ Day, as you mentioned, the women's game at noon and the men's game at 7:30 that night, all on ESPN platforms. So we've really asked ourselves, what can we build around that? And we've really built some significant events that we want the community to come out and enjoy.
Well, you're going to have an International Women's Day celebration, and there's also, I love this, an esports combine that will take place. Talk about those.
Sure. So the esports combine first, that's actually an opportunity for high school age students who are gamers to come and play. And we have colleges and university scouts coming to watch them. And our goal is that those high school students get some scholarships out of that. So that's happening Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then on Tuesday, which is International Women's Day around the globe, we're actually hosting an event that a lot of sponsors have stepped up to make it free for the community to come out. And we're hoping to get 100 or 200 people there, with headliner Susan Boffman, who just led the college football championship game here in Indy, right? The college Super Bowl. And then with our MC, Tole Bevilacqua, who of course is her own incredible Olympic athlete, Fever and WNBA player. She's going to MC the event to really offer some inspiration around women in sport, and then just steps right into the Coliseum for the men's champ game that night.
Julie, let's look in, again, NCAA tournament entirety last year, but first and second rounds this year at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Horizon League will be the institutional host. What does that entail?
You know, I think being the host has become such a rich part of our history as a Horizon League, whether it's Final Fours, first and second round of regionals. And it's a lot more than just being attached to the event. We're responsible essentially for all of the operations in and around the games. So we partner with the Sports Corp, who's just terrific. And we ensure that we're taking care of all of the media, which is a couple hundred media who need credentials to come for these games, that we're assisting with the team arrivals, with the band, the Spirit Dance and Cheer, and then also just ensuring that the game operations go off just seamlessly. And that's our staff. Obviously, we love to run events. We run 19 championships, so we just consider that a 20th event that we help run.
You're a director on the board of directors of the Indiana Sports Corp. And again, they did a magnificent capturing of what took place a year ago. To keep the ball rolling, no pun intended, is a challenge. A lot of people seeing what Indianapolis does and we want to do that. How does Indianapolis stay ahead of that pack, especially with basketball?
You know, I credit Ryan Vaughn and Patrick Talty and the board members, of course, of really being committed to not just resting on our past. I mean, our history is extraordinary, but really taking that as a challenge to continue to build on that legacy moving forward. And I think you see that with the recent news of the NBA 2K League coming here. I mean, Indy wants to be at the forefront of what's happening in sport, whether it's esport now or more traditional sport. And when you think about basketball, that is part of our sports strategy. Of course, we've got more Final Fours coming our way, but now the NCAA's opened up the bid cycle for 2027 through 31 for men's and women's. And we want to do all we can to put our best foot forward to be a part of that. And I'm sure we will. And Julie, as we wrap up, certainly plenty of tickets available for both the NCAA events, Horizon League Championship, and the Big Ten women's and men's tournaments. Absolutely. And for the Horizon League in particular, I got to put the plug in, horizonleague.com/Indy. gives a whole host of all of the amplifying events around our championships, and then most importantly, how to get tickets.
And by the way, if you haven't been to Indiana Farmers Coliseum for basketball, it's a great venue. And so we wish you the best, and thanks for being on the program.
Thank you. Good to be with you as always.
All right.
And finally this week, the remote work trend has created an opportunity for virtual platform companies to add to their client base. We talk about this story and others making headlines with IBJ editor Leslie Weidenbenner.
Hey, I want to start off with the remote work angle and a local company that is really cashing in on that increasing popularity of remote work. Zoom, of course, has exploded, but there's a local company taking advantage as well.
Yeah, Carmel-based Aleo, which was founded by Brandon Fisher, is one of the companies that has taken advantage of this by creating a platform where people can do so much more than just have meetings. I mean, I think we're all kind of zoomed out, but I think the idea is that if Zoom could be so much more productive, if you could do so many more things, you could share your screen more easily, you could work on a document all at the same time. That makes a meeting a lot more productive.
Yeah, very interesting. And interesting to me as well that High Alpha, the venture studio that has spun out so many companies, they're apparently involved in 4 of these type of companies.
That's right. They have Philo, Docket, Boardable, and then they have another one that they has not launched publicly. It's operating in stealth mode right now. So we'll look for another one of these companies to be coming out soon.
Very interesting. Okay. Restaurants, they've obviously been extremely challenged, a very difficult period during the pandemic. Now, as we're beginning to come out of the pandemic, they're faced with rising prices, food prices.
You know, I was really surprised by how high some of these price increases are. I know we're all seeing it at the grocery store, but, you know, one restaurant told us that a case of chicken, for example, has the prices risen from $33 to $110. In addition, for example, to-go containers, the price of to-go containers has doubled, and it's causing a real headache for restaurants. They have to figure out, are they going to eat those costs or are they going to pass them on to customers? Tough choice.
Yeah, very interesting. Also want to mention, I think this is an interesting story. Herff Jones, a traditional school graduation company many of us grew up with, they're coming into the digital age, right, with a new partnership.
Yeah, you think of them as the people who do class rings and who do yearbooks, but they've invested in a startup called StageClip, and StageClip helps give students an opportunity to share their graduation moment on social media. And so that's become a big push for Herff Jones, which, you know, really brings them into the digital age.
Yeah, very interesting. All those stories are interesting, and there's a lot more as well in this week's IBJ. Leslie Weidenbenner, as always, thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.